You could say that Mount Rainier is the crown jewel of Washington State's natural beauty. In fact, the beauty and majesty of it are indescribable. But underneath all of its glory and thick forest might be something sinister. 400 people have vanished from this park, an absolutely staggering number. This statistic of disappearances leaves a lingering sense of unease. Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine-chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hi everyone, welcome to Morbid Outdoors. I'm your host, Elise. And too often I forget to lead with that because I forget that you all don't know my name. But my name is Elise and I'm your host. And I wanted to start today to call attention to a comment that I got on my YouTube channel on one of my audios for the show. So on one of my recent episodes, I mentioned that I was planning to start preparing for backpacking this year by weighting my backpack and going on a hike. And I had a comment that was left from a listener, and honestly, it's a great comment. So I want to read it here for you today because this has valuable information and he makes a great point. I just want to clarify that when I say that I'm weighting down my bag, I'm not like putting weights in it or flour or rocks. I am just using what all I would carry while out in the wilderness because that is a pretty good amount of weight. So the reason why I want to read this comment is because this guy makes a very good point, and I want to give credit where credit is due. This man's name is John, and so John, I commented back, thank you so much for making this comment because I'm glad that people are going to be able to read it on the YouTube and hear it here. So Don said, I will never understand why day hikers who wish to train for a more extensive outing don't just utilize the training treks as advanced shakeout opportunities, becoming ever more intimately familiar with all of their gear. When it comes to water filters, stoves, cookware, shelters, sleep systems, bear cans and bear spray, boo-boo kits, along with perhaps three most important things: a fully redundant personal survival kit worn separately from one's main pack, layered clothing, and the 3-in-3 approach signaling and self-rescue. 3-in-3 refers to always having 3 methods of signal for daytime and likewise for night. Once these are properly packed and situated, there's no need for carrying weighted sacks or barbells wrapped in old towels in one's ruck. Just hump what you'll be carrying on the actual journey. Given that statistically it is day hikers who suffer 80+% of serious search and rescue incidents, there's no such reason to not equip oneself with the proper tools, even if the planned hike is a 3-mile fire road that loops back around to a trailhead. God forbid, but a limb break, hypothermia, or hyperthermia, a sprain or crippling nausea, diarrhea, are all every bit as dangerous as 9/10 of a mile down the trail as they are 7 miles into the wilderness. He goes on to say, but this opens up a much larger conversation, a discussion that is thankfully gaining traction with some reputable voices in backpacking, camping, and bushcraft, namely the cost of the rescuing of intentionally unprepared or underprepared who dial 911 and expect a helicopter with a thermos of hot chocolate to come and get them because they brought neither a rain jacket nor water when they departed. Those days are rapidly coming to an end. Many states are laying out legislation to enable local agencies to bill those who rack up $30,000 in search and rescue expenses simply because they dawdled off into environments for which they were neither properly equipped or trained. In my opinion, it cannot come soon enough. Here in Northwest Washington, the number of people who wander off and are never seen again is absolutely off the charts. A big part of exploring the outdoors is accepting and learning the self-sufficiency curves that postmodern, dysfunctional society systematically breeds out of the generations who have never lived a single day without tech. There is a huge chasm, I can't talk, between Americans who grew up backpacking in the 1970s and 1980s and even the 90s versus those who think even though their experience level is at zero, it's wise to go ultralight and take on the AT, or worse, the PCT, with a base weight of 17 pounds, but total inability to fix even the most basic problems, like a broken trekking pole or torn away pack strap. Those of us aged 45 to 50 came up in the days when a trailside emergency meant that you try to get and remain stable or comfortable while your buddy triple times it back to the ranger station, or worse, to the car, then 35 miles back down the mountain and into town. This mindset built a massive self-sufficiency quotient that is all but completely absent from the majority of hikers today. Setting oneself up to identity, manage or ameliorate and overcome problems on trail is one of the most satisfying aspects of the sport. So this was an extremely lengthy comment, but I wanted to read it because obviously when I said I was weighting down my pack to go train, he assumed I meant like just putting rocks or barbells in it, but that's actually not what I do. And in most cases when I hike, I do have my backpack with me, and definitely when I'm trying to train for a longer or multi-nighter backpacking trip, I will hike with all of that stuff. I hike with my sleeping system, food, plus extra food, small lighters, and all the things that you need to survive in the wilderness. I could list every single thing that's in my backpack, but we would be here for a very long time. So I just want you guys to know that when I say weighting down, I don't want you to think, oh, she's just putting like rocks in her backpack. Nope, I'm actually traveling with what I need to survive in the wilderness. And I encourage you to do the same. I've talked about this before on the show, but it's essential to carry the 10 essentials. And if you don't know what those are, you can go to the show notes because they are linked in every single episode's show notes. And like Dawn said, a lot of people now are just like seeing things online. Oh, that's pretty. I want to go do that. And they're not doing the research, and they might have never even been on a trail before, and they don't know trail etiquette, or they don't know how dangerous it is if you're unprepared. And I'm not saying this to sway anyone. I think the outdoors are for everyone, but I think that most people they're not prepared enough. And if you're out in the wilderness, you need to be prepared for anything. Anything could happen at any given time. And like he said, it's becoming all too much common for people to dial 911 or, put other people's lives at risk because they were unprepared. I hope I'm not sounding too harsh, but it is becoming a real problem, like he said. So I just wanted to read his comment because it is thought-provoking, and he is right, and I'm glad he shared that because I want people to read it. I want people to hear it, and if you recreate outside, you need to do so prepared and safe, and you can't prepare for everything, but you can make sure that you're prepared to at least survive, okay? And if you get lost, you need to know what to do if you get lost. That happens a lot. Should you keep walking in an unknown direction? No. And you should know how to use a compass, and you should have a paper map. And if you want one on your phone, use one on your phone. But most of the incidents that we discuss on the show are preventable by being prepared and taking the proper safety precautions. So I just wanted to read that and let you guys know that that is a very good comment and multiple good points from a listener on YouTube. So thank you for that, Dawn. In terms of other things, not much is going on. Just remember that I have launched a Patreon. And so if you want extra shows, extra episodes, and a little bit more, I don't know, maybe laid back personal content, you can go subscribe to my Patreon and get a bonus episode every month. And coming in the summer, probably more than just one episode in the summer. So I hope that you guys are all having a good week, and I can't wait to get outside this weekend and do some more hiking. I will be this weekend I'll be in Las Vegas for my dad's 4th wedding. Woohoo. And that'll be exciting, but I'm pre-recording this, so I will have been hiking last weekend. It gets so confusing when I'm pre-recording shows, but when you work 40 hours a week and you're trying to do a podcast, time is kind of, gets a little bit messed up. But anyways, let's dive into today. So we're going to be discussing Mount Rainier National Park, and this is often called Tahoma, the mountain. Rainier is the name that was given to this mountain after someone that, said that he discovered it, but he really didn't. I love this area. I love Mount Rainier, and I visited twice, and I can't wait to go back, and hopefully next summer. It is just so, so beautiful and awe-inspiring. It really is. So first, let's get into negative reviews of Mount Rainier National Park. Bill said, a national park shouldn't have wait times. The infrastructure isn't there to support the number of visitors, and the parking doesn't support the amount of vehicles. The mountain and park are among the nation's finest, but are ruined because they haven't adjusted for the increase of tourism and local population growth. Veronica said, sat in line 3 hours to go through the gate of the park. They should convert to take a photo of your license plate, send you a bill later system. Then get up there and Paradise Lodge is closed and the visitor center closed 15 minutes later. Nothing posted about the closures. Very disappointing trip. So while I don't know exactly what month Veronica was visiting, girl, you can wake up early and you can get into the park early. And I want to say, if I remember correctly, they did institute a reservation system or a timed entry system. And this is to hopefully curb those issues. But sometimes it creates longer lines. And something you can do is you can get into the park very early. Now, I've hiked in Mount Rainier National Park, and I got to the trailhead before sunrise. So it was so nice to have the entire trail literally to myself. I know a lot of people don't want to get up early, but if you want to beat the crowds, it's one of the only ways to do it. So just a little nugget of wisdom in there for you. Dawn said, I flew 5 hours to Seattle, drove 2 hours to sit in traffic for 1 hour near the entrance to find out you need reservations to enter a state park. What kind of pot-smoking lawmaker thought this was a good idea? So, Dawn, Mount Rainier is not a state park, it's a national park, and you have access to the internet just like everybody else. So if you need to know if they're doing reservations, you can Google Mount Rainier National Park and click on the first link that comes up. And I guarantee you it will say on the National Park website, it will tell you about the reservations. I just think it's insane when people go to visit national parks that they know are popular, that they know are crowded, and they don't even do a simple Google search about visiting first. That is absolutely insane to me. And then they leave a negative review because they didn't look into their trip before they went on it. So I guess they are doing timed entries, and I say good for them. And did you know that the timed entries don't apply before 7 a.m.? So if you can get your ass into the park before 7, you don't have to worry about the timed entry or reservation. So anyways, Dawn was very upset. Laura said there are no marked trails and no directional arrows telling you what direction to even walk in like you get at a national forest. What an odd thing to say, honestly, because I've had the opposite experience. Usually national forest trails are not marked, hardly at all, and national park trails are usually more heavily marked. So I don't know what trail she was doing, but it wasn't one that I've seen. I just want to say, and I'm not trying to bash these people, but I kind of am. Don't be like Dawn and Lara, and just don't be like them. They obviously have access to the internet, so they could have planned their trip better and had a much more pleasant experience. Planning usually equals better outcomes. So just want to remind you, if you are heading to a national park anytime soon, you can Google that national park and you can look on the Plan Your Visit tab. Every single national park's website has one. You can see if there are reservations. You can see what's closed or what's open. For instance, Crater Lake National Park is closing the Cleetwood Cove Trail, so for the next 2 years, you will not be able to hike down and swim in Crater Lake. But I can bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to be reading comments about Crater Lakes National Park and how it's so bad and they're going to be rated 1 star because you can't hike down into the lake. It's closed. Guess what? There are websites for this, everybody. So anyways, that's my rant of the day. Mount Rainier National Park was established on March 2nd, 1899, and it was the 4th national park in the United States. It is over 200,000 acres, and in 2022, it saw over 1.6 million visitors. 97% of the park is preserved as wilderness under the National Wilderness Preservation System as Mount Rainier Wilderness. It was the first national park created from a national forest. Mount Rainier ascends to about 14,400 feet above sea level, and it's an icon in Washington landscape. An active volcano, Mount Rainier is the most glaciated peak in the contiguous U.S., spawning 5 major rivers. Subalpine wildflower meadows ring the icy volcano, while ancient forest cloaks Mount Rainier's lower slopes. Wildlife is very abundant in the park's ecosystems. The original name of the mountain is Tacoma, and it's the same name as the nearby city in the Puget Sound region, and the name comes from the local indigenous tribe's name for this mountain instead of Rainier. The earliest evidence of human activity in the area, which is now Mount Rainier National Park, is a projectile point dated back to circa 4,000 to 5,000 before present, which is, I've never seen that before, which was found along Bench Lake Trail, which is the first section of Snow Lake Trail. John Muir was instrumental in preserving this place. People have a lot of mixed feelings about him. I'm pretty neutral, but I just want to mention that he was a huge person in the preservation of Mount Rainier National Park, and he actually visited way back in 1888. There are more than 960 vascular plant species and more than 260 non-vascular plant species in the park. As you can assume, there are a lot of mammals, and some of those include cougars, black bears, coyotes, bobcats, weasels, moles, red fox, porcupine, skunk, martins, shrew, pika, elk, and mountain goat. The common birds of this park include chickadee, kinglet, northern goshawk, willow flycatcher, spotted owl, Steller's jay, and bald eagle. There are a lot of birds like grouse and everything else. Fish that inhabit the lakes, rivers, and streams within the park include the bull trout, cutthroat trout, rainbow trout, mountain whitefish, and sculpins. Although more rare, there are Chinook salmon and coho salmon within the park's boundaries. And depending on the elevation, the climate classification for Mount Rainier National Park goes from humid continental climate to subarctic climate, again, depending on where you are in the park. The National Parks Service says that Paradise, which is like a area of the park, is the snowiest place on Earth where snowfall is measured regularly. So, during the winter and a lot of the spring, some parts of the park are closed. So if you expect to go to Mount Rainier in, December, January and have a great time, you might, but just don't expect everything to be open, even some of the roads. Mount Rainier National Park contains 42 locations designated on the National Register of Historic Places, including 4 National Historic Landmarks. In fact, did you know that there's basically a mass grave on Mount Rainier? And not from any of the people we're going to talk about today. Basically, a plane crash happened with the Marines on board, and it was too much of a task and too dangerous to get all of their bodies off of the mountain. So the plane wreckage and all of those Marines are still up there, and it's really sad. I highly encourage you to go visit the Marine Memorial, and it's located along West Side Road and can be reached by hiking or biking. Now, let's get into the meat of today's episode. So, I mentioned before that people call Mount Rainier Tacoma. It is also referred to as Tahoma. So, if I use any of those terms interchangeably, just know that I'm talking about Mount Rainier. So, Mount Rainier, or Tahoma, as some indigenous tribes call it, it's perhaps the most dangerous mountain in America. In fact, it's not actually a mountain, it's an active volcano, or what's called a stratovolcano. Estimates put its formation at around 32 million years ago. But this picturesque snow-capped mountain, Washington State's residents and visitors know today, really came into being about 500,000 years ago. And this is according to naturalist Jeff Anatonelis Lapp, author of Tahoma and Its People, which is a great book, and you should definitely read it. Mount Rainier National Park is a paradise for nature lovers who can hike, camp, and view wildlife. It boasts over 275 miles of maintained trails, catering to hikers of all skill levels. There are, really hard, challenging hikes like the Wonderland Trail that goes around the base of Mount Rainier. There are also very easy hikes. There are accessible hikes. There are pretty much, if you can walk or roll or whatever you do, Mount Rainier has it for you. And like I just said, there's something for everyone. Popular easy trails leads to stunning wildflower meadows, breathtaking viewpoints, and even glaciers. But unfortunately, not every visit ends well for a lot of visitors. And this is why we're here today. So I want to talk about some victims and suspicious circumstances regarding disappeared persons at Mount Rainier National Park. While there are many accidents like falls, climbing accidents, there are a lot of mysterious deaths, suicides, but above that, there are more missing persons in this park. So let's talk about some of Mount Rainier's missing people and mysterious deaths. And this is not an exhaustive list. So I just want to start with saying the first one that we're going to discuss is from 1992. And I found this on the incident report. And basically, rangers were investigating reports of an unidentifiable debris on the Cowlitz Glacier in September of 1992. And this, this was plane wreckage. A small plane parts were scattered across the glacier. Information furnished by the State Department of Transportation indicated that a Piper Cherokee Arrow had been reported missing in that area on January 13th, 1972, while on a flight from Pasco, Washington to Seattle. Pasco. Some hikers found a plane crash from 20 years earlier. Basically, at that time, they were searching for the remains of the 3 passengers. So I just think that's insane. 20 years and they just found the aircraft in 1992, even though it was reported missing, 20 years before. So very interesting to me. It seems like there's been a lot of plane accidents in this area because of the sheer size of this mountain. Not that people can't see it, but when conditions are bad or your gear malfunctions, there are going to be aerial disasters with such a huge mountain up way just towering above everything else. Our first person we're going to discuss today is Ramona Lynn Fay. And in 1995, she left her sister's residence in Spanaway, Washington, after cutting her own throat. She was later involved in a single car accident at Mount Rainier National Park and had to be towed from a ditch. Her car was later found in Mount Rainier National Park with the door open and the engine running. Witnesses saw her on a trail in the park, but an extensive search failed to locate her, and she's technically still missing. So, obviously, it's a very sad story. There were likely mental health issues involved and possibly substance abuse. I don't know. But how bizarre is it that her car was found, doors ajar, engines running, and she just ran into the woods and never came back out? She wasn't a hiker. She wasn't on a multi-day backpacking trip. She literally got out of her car and ran into the forest. The next missing person I want to talk about, I covered, I think on episode 4, and this was Sheila Kearns, and she went missing at an employee bonfire. Her remains were found the following spring in the search area, not too far from the employee housing. An extensive search failed to reveal any clues about her whereabouts until her remains were found. Now, the park has received support from the FBI into looking into what happened to Sheila. And basically, she was going to a bonfire. She had just gotten hired for the off season as well. And she disappeared and no one could find her. And so they thought that maybe she was abducted, taken out of the park. They really didn't know. There was nothing. All of her stuff was still in her cabin, but she was gone. And so, later on, not even a whole year later, someone was setting up an obstacle course for the rangers for like a little training fun activity before the park hit busy season, and they found her remains. Her remains were in the area that was searched. And this is like not just by humans, there were dogs searching for her in that fall, the previous fall, and they never found her, but somehow she mysteriously turned up in May. Her remains did, at least. So they do know that it was her. And basically, in the incident report that I found, the FBI said it was homicide, and her case is still open. And it's pretty much a cold case. And I think about this one so often because someone that was working there knows something. I doubt it was a visitor to the park. This was in the kind of the shoulder going into the off season. I don't know. I feel like it was someone that worked with her and maybe she turned someone down and they got mad. I'm not sure we will ever know, but her family and friends are still searching for answers and her case is cold. It's been cold since 1996 and it's so sad, but the FBI have officially said it's homicide. Fast forward to 1999, a writer from New York whose name was Joe Woods Jr., he vanished without a trace in Mount Rainier National Park. He was attending a journalism conference in Seattle with over 6,000 other writers of color. And after checking in and socializing on the first day of this kind of like retreat, Wood rented a car and drove to Mount Rainier. He was last seen at Comet Falls, which is a hike of up to 3 hours from meadows to snowfields at 4,800 feet. And he's never been found. And, other hikers saw him. I'm assuming he got lost and perished in the outdoors. But his remains, or any clues as to what happened to him, have never been found. Then in 2010, a man named Eric Lewis, who was 57 at the time of his disappearance, he was an experienced mountain climber, and he disappeared in severe weather conditions in high altitude at approximately 14,000 feet. He was attempting to summit Mount Rainier in July of 2010, and his case is featured in the Missing 411 book North America and Beyond. Eric Lewis was climbing Mount Rainier with two other mountain climbers, and at some point during the climb, the two party members noticed that he had unclipped from the climbing rope and that he was missing. They contacted park rangers stationed at Camp Muir, and a search was initiated, but search and rescue operations were hampered by strong winds and heavy snowfall. Searchers were able to locate Eric Lewis's backpack and a nearby snow cave, like a man-made shelter, but they failed to locate Eric, who has never been found. There was no other trace of him, and this is the craziest part. It's not like he was hiking and they just turned back and he was gone. He unclipped himself. He unclipped himself from his climbing rope. There wasn't it didn't break. There wasn't anything like that. He unclipped himself and then he was gone. I might do a full episode on this case because it is fascinating and I think about this one a lot. But basically, they found out he was unclipped. They looked for him. They got rangers involved. There was a man-made snow cave. His backpack was there, but Eric was gone. Then in 2014, a man named Edwin Birch, he disappeared, and this happened on July 12th, 2014. He was a 64-year-old Tacoma resident, and he was hiking with his son when he vanished. Now, the two planned to do a challenging 19-mile route, starting at opposite ends and meeting midway at Indian Bar. The son reported seeing his father there. He was tired, but he was in good spirits. The search began when Birch never arrived at White River's endpoint. On July 26, 2015, Birch's remains were found near Frying Pan Glacier, and the cause of his death is uncertain. They don't actually know, but it took, almost 2 weeks exactly, I guess, to find his remains. And how did he just not show up? He was very experienced and had hiked in this national park a lot before. In a string of eerily similar cases, 3 men who are Michael Fortenberry, Nathan Lerner, and Austin Chase all went missing near Mount Rainier within a span of 1 year. All of these men were in their 30s, and their cars were found abandoned near the Fairfax Bridge in Carbonado, Washington. The first to disappear was 31-year-old Michael Fortenberry, and this happened in February 2020. Michael left his home in Bonnie Lake, Washington to go to the laundromat. His car was later found on Fairfax Bridge, with witnesses reporting that it had been there since the day he went missing. Despite extensive searching, Michael has never been found. It's believed that he may have experienced a bout of delusion, possibly due to a medical condition, and wandered off into the wilderness. Nathan Lerner, who was 30 years old, went missing in January 2021 after being released from a hospital in Auburn, Washington. His car was found abandoned near the Fairfax Bridge, and it is believed that he may have jumped off the bridge in a suspected suicide. However, his body has never been recovered, and it's left his family with a lot of unanswered questions. In another case from January 2021, 36-year-old Austin Chase's car was found over an embankment near the Fairfax Bridge after a police pursuit. When rescue crews searched the car, no driver was found. Chase's disappearance is considered suspicious, with widespread rumors that he was murdered, but no body or other evidence has been found to support this theory. Search efforts yielded no sign of any of the men, and it really baffled investigators that they were such eerily similar, disappearances. Theories ranged from accidents in the treacherous terrain to possible foul play, but there have been no definitive answers found at all. Also in 2020, 28-year-old Matthew Bunker, a Seattle resident and West Point graduate, went missing while hiking with a group at Mount Rainier National Park. Matthew had been skiing with a partner at around 10,400 feet above sea level when, on their way back down, unknown events led to his fall in a steep and treacherous terrain. The area where Matthew fell is prone to rock falls and avalanches, including one that killed 6 climbers in 2014. The search for Matthew was hampered by inclement weather, making it difficult for search teams to locate him. However, on a day with clear skies, a helicopter search was conducted, and Matthew's body was found along the base of Liberty Ridge. In a statement, Tracy Swartout, deputy superintendent of Mount Rainier National Park, extended condolences to Bunker's loved ones, expressing sorrow that they were unable to bring him home to his family. So it's a really sad incident when an accident happens, like climbing or skiing. And this one is not like mysterious, although it was included in one of these sources I was looking at that had pegged it or marked it as mysterious or suspicious. Now, the next 3 we're going to discuss also happened in 2020, within months of each other. Talon Sabah, 27, was reported missing June 22nd, 2020, one day after rangers found his vehicle in a parking lot at Paradise, where he had planned to hike. His body was recovered from an off-trail drainage near Paradise, according to a news release. More than 7 search teams scoured the area for him in the days after he went missing, but could not find any sign of him, and then he just kind of was found. In June 19th, 2020, Vincent G., I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, Vincent was last seen in the Longmire area on June 19th. He vanished while hiking the Van Trump Trail near Longmire in Mount Rainier. He was wearing black pants, a blue and white tie-dyed shirt, a small drawstring bag, and basically search efforts continued, but they haven't found him yet. And then I'm sure you've heard of this one because this is one of the only people that I'd heard of going missing at Mount Rainier in 2020, despite most of these taking place that same year. Dr. Sam DeBall, he went missing in October 2020. He was 33, and he was actually solo hiking in the national park on Friday, October 9th. He had intended on returning the next day. Like I said, he was last seen October 9th on the Mother Mountain Loop Trail near Lake Mowich. Reported missing on October 12th, 2020, when he didn't return. Extensive search efforts failed to locate him, and he was a professor at a local university, and I know I saw a lot about his disappearance, his initial disappearance online and then in the news. So October is just such a hard time to go missing there because pretty soon it's going to start snowing and it's not going to stop, for months. And Dr. Sam Dubal has not been found to this day, and it'll be 5 years in October. Fast forward to 2023, and on May 30th, 2023, 80-year-old Dawes Eddy embarked on a solo climb of Mount Rainier, a trek that he had done many times before. An experienced hiker, Eddy was celebrating his 80th birthday by revisiting his favorite mountain. About a week later, search crews found his body near Cathedral Gap, which is a high-elevation area prone to rock falls and avalanches. The exact circumstances surrounding his disappearance still remain unclear. I did find a very interesting post on Reddit, so, take this with a grain of salt or take it at face value, whatever you want to do. This was posted 2 years ago, and the title or, the little subject line was, "I'm a park ranger at Mount Rainier. People keep going missing, and I think I found out why." This person went on to say, 25, that is the number of people who have gone missing at the park since the beginning of the year, with nothing being done or said about it. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'll lose my job when they find this posting, but I have other things to be scared of at that point, and this needs to get out. I'm a wilderness ranger at Mount Rainier. My job is to walk the hundreds of miles of trail and wilderness in the park, looking for problems and helping lost and injured hikers. In the old days, any lost hiker would mean all of us going out together, putting together a search plan, and doing our best to get them home safely. Things are different today, ever since the start of 2022. When a person gets reported missing, the family is assured we are on it and will do our best to find them, and promise that they will dispatch us to look. As soon as the family is gone, our bosses tell us that they'll have a search and rescue company take over. And if we know what's best for our jobs, we should just focus on checking trail conditions and doing the rest of our jobs. And so it's gone on since 2022. At first, there were just a few people missing here and there all over the park. It didn't seem that unusual other than our rangers not being involved in the search, but we figured it was some new policy and shrugged it off. More people started disappearing as the year went on, making all of us wonder what was going on and why it had been made clear to us that we should keep our mouths shut. Personally, I figured it was just a combination of bad trail conditions from a rough winter, an influx of inexperienced hikers, and the Park Service trying to avoid looking bad when we needed more funding. That is until last Thursday. It was an overcast day, and I was walking along the trail up to Ipsut Pass in the Carbon River area, humming quietly to myself to pass the time and wondering how far I would go before I had to put on crampons when I saw it. Off to the side of the trail, maybe 50 feet into the forest, there was an odd light on the forest floor. At first, I thought the light was just a reflection off of the water or some trash someone had left behind. But as I moved closer, the light didn't fade or change. It just stayed steady. Maybe it was a lost flashlight. I had walked this trail dozens of times and never noticed it before. I knelt down, taking my pack off, and saw that the light seemed to be coming from just under the dirt. For some reason, I felt uneasy. I looked around to see if anyone else was nearby on the trail and saw no one. Shrugging, I reached into the dirt to poke at the light and see what it was. Poking around, I found the corner of a slightly open trapdoor that was at most only a foot wide on each side. It was camouflaged nearly perfectly. If it had not been left just barely ajar with the light exposed, there was no way anyone would have seen it from the trail. I kept opening it, feeling uneasy, but hoping it was some sort of buried seismometer, or at worst, maybe some hiker's idea of a good place to cache food and water for a long trek. Instead, I found the opening to what appeared to be a small burrow of sorts with an electric camping torch at the corner. I shoved my head down to look inside. The space was small, with enough room for one person if they didn't mind contorting themselves. On the walls of the burrow were dozens of Polaroid photos of people hiking. All of the photos seemed to have been taken very low to the ground. The photos were from all over the park, many dozens or more miles apart. Most of the photos I didn't recognize, but among them I saw a few that I knew, in fact, were hikers that had gone missing over the last year. Then my heart stopped. I saw a photo of me hiking along the Ipsut Pass Trail around a half hour ago. Crack! I heard a twig snap somewhere around me. I took my head out of the burrow, started running down the trail I came. I didn't look back or stop until I got to the wilderness cabin near Ipsut Campground. I locked and barricaded the door and waited until another ranger showed up the next morning, not sleeping a wink. I asked him to walk back along the trail with me. He was annoyed that I wouldn't say why, but agreed. We spent an hour looking, but couldn't find any sign of the burrow. I asked for some time off right afterwards, and my manager seemed very suspicious and demanded to know why. I made up some excuse about my family and didn't tell him or anyone else what I saw. For some reason, I knew that telling them would at best end with me losing my job. I don't know who or what made that burrow, but I think it's taking people at Rainier, and for some reason, the government is covering it up. I wish that was the end of the story, but it's not. This afternoon, I saw something glinting within the air vent on the floor of my kitchen. I thought maybe my cat had stuck another toy in it, but I took the grating off the vent to take the toy out. Instead of a cat toy, I found a Polaroid photo taken low to the ground of me making breakfast this morning. And I hope, this is me talking, I hope you made it through that story, because obviously that was not a true story. But I do think it's cool to read just little, I don't know, sci-fi, fantasy. And there are conspiracy theories about the National Park Service and the National Park System. And if you haven't heard of them, you should look it up, because some of them, I don't know, they sound like they have a little bit of credence to them. Um, I just thought that was a fun story to share about Mount Rainier National Park. And just to kind of keep things light, obviously, there's probably not like supernatural forces at play or anything like that, but sometimes it's so hard to distinguish reality from fiction, especially when you're constantly seeing, missing persons at certain national parks. And it seems like there are so many, because there are, and you're wondering if there's something else going on. And most of the time, it's that someone was unprepared, an accident happened, or someone got lost. And so I just want you guys to know that you should carry the 10 essentials with you. Do not ever go off trail, and know how to survive if something happens to you outside. I like to entertain the conspiracy theories about the national parks, but it's really explainable, as in people go outside into these wilderness areas and they're not prepared, and they die out there because it happens. So if you take away anything from today's episode, there's likely not anything going on in the national parks except for unpreparedness and sometimes murder. But that happens way less often than you would think. So I don't know. I hope you guys didn't actually hate this. But I just want to make one last statement of Mount Rainier National Park. It's so pretty, but it can be so gruesome. And really, I guess I just want to leave you with, only the wilderness knows the secrets. As always, recreate responsibly, and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, a quick review helps us know what you love about the show. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time.